Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Bryn Evans, and this is listening to TeacherEvansNativo, the channel where I speak and you practice your English listening. In today's episode, I'll be talking about my experience as an immigrant. And yes, believe it or not, I have been an immigrant, both in Spain and I'm currently one here in Brazil too. I think people don't realize, or maybe they forget, that when British people move abroad, we sometimes pass through the same difficulties as people from other nationalities. And I'm sure that many of you that are listening to this right now have passed through or are currently passing through those same things. So you understand what I'm saying. And just to let you know, I understand you too, because I've been there, I've done that, and I'm currently passing through the same things. Don't get me wrong, some British people move abroad to Spain, Italy, Portugal, and places like that, and don't live that stereotypical life of an immigrant. But unless they're rich or are moving due to work, maybe to another English-speaking country, like a British person moving to Canada or Australia, America, because they've found a job already waiting for them there. Or maybe even to retire, which was very common where I used to live in Spain. British people used to move there to retire. Then, in that case, then it really is just one long holiday. But for me, it was the complete opposite. I'm far from privileged. I've never really had money to spend at will. When I was young, we always lived paycheck to paycheck, month to month. And when I moved out and started paying my own bills, it was just the same. I've never been without the necessities, so I have to thank my mum for that. But my life has never been easy. I'm not saying that I've suffered. Far from it, in fact. But just because I'm from Scotland or Europe, I seem to fall within the same stereotype of being rich and not knowing what life is really like. Or at least that's what certain people tell me here in Brazil. I'm not going to go into too many details about my time in Spain, as I have another video planned for that. But today, more about my time as an immigrant. Those experiences that most of us here have already experienced, but from my perspective, to give you more of an idea of the life of a gringo, or giri is what they called me in Spain. First of all, I lived in the south of Tenerife, which is an island, so as you can imagine, there aren't many career paths to take, other than the so-called immigrant jobs of working in a bar or a restaurant as a waiter or a chef, or you could be a cleaner or sell excursions. PR was a popular job, but it is almost entirely commission-based and really not very stable. So it wasn't for me. Even working in a hotel was difficult where I used to live, as everywhere required that you spoke 4 to 5 languages if you weren't a Spanish native. German was strangely the essential one. It wasn't even English. So again, speaking English natively really doesn't have the advantages as everyone thinks it does. Anyways, I started working in a bar, young. I was 12 when I started working to help pay the bills. Then at 15, I started working as a labourer, another common job over there. Although I didn't last long as a labourer, as I knew that the environment and the career really wasn't for me, and I knew I could earn a little bit more doing something else. Shortly after that, I started working in a bar again, this time serving drinks instead of clearing tables. I was still underage, don't get me wrong. But at least I was a little bit older than 12. Besides, I'm tall, so I didn't look like I was a complete child behind a bar serving alcohol. But I did what I could, what I needed to do in order to earn money, to help at home. As when we first moved there, my mum used to earn €20 a shift. That's for an 8-hour shift. She needed to work 11 shifts a week in order to pay the bills and put food on the table, the bare minimum. She would work 5 doubles and 1 8-hour shift a week, just to survive. As minimum wage didn't really exist on the island at that time. You accepted what the boss offered you, or you simply had to look for something else. There was no negotiation. Her boss used to tell her that the tips is what makes the wage up, although it was a pool bar in some rundown complex. So she was lucky to see €2 in tips a day. I didn't understand how her boss thought that that would make a difference. A few years later, when I started to work, things were a little bit better, but the wages still didn't meet the cost of living. €40 a shift, €5 an hour, it wasn't enough to save money after surviving for the month. No leftovers to travel or even treat yourself to some new clothes. You worked to survive, that was it. Rent, bills and food. I used to work 60 to 70 hours a week, and after 7 years straight, I still arrived here in Brazil with next to nothing in my pocket. That's the way it is. You work to survive. The Spanish, or at least the Canarians, the native people from the island of Tenerife, they don't really like the British. I think they're more tired of having their beautiful home flooded with tourists and disrespectful expats. And I can sort of understand it. Having lived there for 11 years, I saw everything that there was to see. So I can get where they're coming from. But it made life a lot harder, seeing as I was part of their problem. Going to the doctors or the hospital, the bank, or any sort of situation with the police was always more difficult than it needed to be. Even when speaking Spanish, they still didn't go out of their way to help you. Like I said in a previous episode, I studied at a Spanish public school. It was hell. Again, I'll go into more detail in another episode, but in short, I was singled out, discriminated against for being British. It wasn't even by the kids, or the other students. It was always by certain teachers. Like they just weren't willing to help. I don't know if in your country it's the same, but at least in Spain, you sit in rows on singular desks. And when the teachers were handing out sheets, exercises, or whatever type of learning material they had, they would always skip over my desk, like I wasn't even there, like I didn't exist. They wouldn't even look at me during the class. They would just pretend that they had one less student to teach. And they would continue to do this without so much as an explanation. And the teachers that would treat me in this way were still the first to complain about me to the school director, saying that I wasn't doing any of the activities that they were giving out, when in fact, they never gave them to me. I didn't really care at the time. Less work to do. I was an introverted kid, so I was happy to sit in silence for an hour. But thinking about it now, they were adults. They chose being a teacher as a career. No one had forced them. Yet they were still happy enough to see a child suffer and personally discriminate against them just because I was from a different country. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I suffered racism or xenophobia or anything like that. I never compare my personal experiences to those who have actually suffered. The important thing is that I'm okay now. Those years at school didn't leave any lasting damage. I'm good, believe me. But I'm saying that I've felt similar things here in Brazil. Just isolated cases. As in general, Brazilians and Brazil as a nation have only been welcoming, and the people here are super friendly. But it's funny, as the town where I live, the people tend to stop understanding me once they find out that I'm foreign. Like we'd be a good 2-3 minutes into a conversation, and then they'd ask me where I was from. And when I say, oh, I'm from Scotland, from that moment on, I'd only have to repeat myself and be met with them screwing their face at every sentence that I would say, even after they had previously understood me without any problem at all. I find it funny, as it's always the same type of person. I'm used to it now. I even make the presumption when it's going to happen, depending on who I'm talking with. And another case is one specific supermarket that treats me a little differently too. I'm not joking. When I walk in, all of the staff's eyes are automatically on me. Then the whispers and the giggles start. Now I don't know what jokes they could be making, as I'm confident in my appearance, and I know I treat everyone with the respect and decency they deserve. So, I know the only topic they could have is, in fact, my nationality. And that I wear with pride. I'll never try to hide it from anyone. I'm Scottish. That's right. But overall, Brazil is a very welcoming country for immigrants. For anyone. I came here with absolutely nothing. And today, I can honestly say that my wife and I can spend a little more in the supermarket if we see something we want to try. We can eat out on weekends when we want. We can go to the cinema or go out for drinks with friends. We can even go away for a few days. Traveling abroad, well, that's still out of the question. But that's because it's very expensive here. It has nothing to do with being an immigrant and the salary I receive. It's just out of the question for most people. Yeah, sure, if I had stayed in Britain and had never moved, could I have had a better life? Maybe, but you never know. Sure, I'd be earning a lot more right now, but nobody can predict the future. And like I've said before, I think I've learned a lot in these last few years in Brazil. Things that I doubt I would have learned if I had never left Britain. And the same things I truly believe will take me further to different places, other levels, being an immigrant or not. I can achieve big things here. The thing that's left is to just do it. So guys, that's all for today's episode. Hopefully it helps you get one step closer to improving your English. Remember, little by little, you will get there. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow my socials, which are linked in the descriptions, for English tips. Have an amazing day, and until next time, ciao ciao.